I took my first breath in a ruined village club where I walked around with my misery and hunger. Let it pass. Unfortunately, you don't have a family to warm you up with love. Your mother didn't show much affection to you. Your father was like a merchant. Because you were not a child, your family was brought to the world as a ticket to a future winter. I'm sorry, I know, but that's the truth. So that's why I don't talk too much about your childhood and don't hurt you. Without knowing what love is, you came to the age of 4 with enough food to die of hunger. When you were 4 years old, a man came to your door, and your father gave you to that man. Your mother continued to turn around and mix the pot as if nothing had happened while you were leaving. Your father was busy counting the gold. That's when you realized the truth. Your life was spent on a bag of gold and 2 bags of flour. If you had to be honest, you went a little cheap. Or the assassins used the dagger 150 code. Who knows? When he got on the horse carriage, he left behind not only his family, but also his childhood, his name and his humanity. After a few days of journey, we arrived at the castle on the top of Bida. This was a tarika, a belief. It was a castle where there were tens of people who were assassins, and their purpose was to join you. Because when you were in your mother's belly, they paid your money in advance. Yes, you were technically their property. So, without losing much time, my education began. As a result, tens of people waiting to be dealt with outside are traveling. You have to grow quickly. How should I say in the education marathon? A little too hard. In your first lessons, they taught you the anatomical weaknesses of people. Not a joke. They even gave you a towel to practice and said, "Stop your heart with a single shot." They took away the feeling of mercy at that age. Because the biggest enemy of an assassin is his conscience. What if you don't do it? You eat a solid stick and feed on onion bread for 3 days. I know, you live a life where a 5-year-old can't raise a child, but your bad news hasn't ended. You don't have a chance to run away from here. So, rather than trying to run away from water suckers, if you get caught, you will regret not dying, which you will get caught anyway. Of course, your fate is up to your will. As a result of a small weakness or lack of obedience, you can find yourself in the bottom of the earth while plucking your horses. Because this castle needs a servant and a living experience. Anyway, you came to the age of 7 by solving your basic training. Now it's time for your training to get serious. After all, you are a climber. They planted a plant that quickly grows into the garden of the trainers for the development of physical abilities. Your job is to jump on this plant every morning, wake up or not. Of course, it was easy at first, but it gets harder as the day goes by. The plant comes to the knee after a month, to the waist after 6 months. And since you grow up with the plant, you will gain a strong jumping skill without realizing it. Of course, we sleep on the rope everywhere. Seriously, on the rope bed is forbidden. A thick blanket is built between the 2 poles. Your job is to sleep on this blanket. This both increases your balance and also allows you to wake up in the slightest shake. Because deep sleep is death for a sniper. Even if you fall a few times because of insomnia, you will get used to it eventually. Of course, a sniper must do his job quietly. That's why they put thin, wet, and immediately torn papers on the suites on the floor. Your job is to pass without tearing these papers, hitting them, and making noise. If the paper is torn, there is a solid stick. In addition, when you are kidnapped and tied up, you need to get rid of them yourself. Because most of the time, a sniper is hunted alone. That's why they tie their hands tightly from behind and say, "Get rid of it or eat it." The only way to get rid of it is to play with your fingers instead, shrink your hand and bite it through the rope. It's painful, but it saves your life. You are also trained to use the main weapon, the poison knife. But when you have no weapon, you have to use your body like a weapon. That's why, first, rice is filled in a large bag, then sand and pebble at levels. The task is to hit these bags several times with your fingertips. At first, your fingers bleed, your nails fall, but when you get better, your finger can even pierce the wood. It's a free manicure. Of course, it's the result of refluxing and being inactive. Teachers suddenly throw a wooden sword, a comb or water on your face. The purpose is to teach you to close your eyes, that is, to kill your fear reflex. Of course, you will also take lessons for hours and even days without moving. Because you don't know how long you will wait in a closet for a mission. I know all of this is heavy, but I haven't learned your worst feature yet. They also apply the method called poison breakfast in their training. This is a very early method that came from Pontus King Mithridates. This man was born in the most difficult times of the Roman Republic. Interestingly, the place we call Pontus Kingdom is actually the Black Sea region. The capital was first Amasia, then Sinopt. The man's mother poisoned his father and killed him. With the fear of the future, he fled to the mountains as a child and every day he poisoned himself by drinking a little poison. Let me give you an ironic information. When he was defeated by the Romans, he wanted to commit suicide to not be imprisoned and tortured. And he drank the very powerful poison he carried with him. But he didn't die because he was trained against poison for years. Of course, he killed himself by saying, "Give me your sword, I'll kill you," at the end of the job. Anyway, Your breakfast wasn't cheese or olive, it was arsenic. A very small amount of arsenic or snake poison is put on your meal every day. The amount is not enough to kill, but it will make you sick, it will sting, it will burn in the fire. And your body will gain immunity against poison over time. In fact, a kind of Russian strategy is also played here. Because snake poison does not have much meaning as long as it is not taken from the vein. But if it hurts in your mouth, you can take your last breath. Of course, the main purpose here is to make you feel better if you bite your tongue out of fear. You call him a rapist, he can't be weak. Yes, a child should not experience these. But unfortunately, there is no such thing as a pedagogue in this castle. That's why the Gudubates around you didn't hurt you much. Anyway, by skipping physical education, you came to your senses until the age of 15. Of course, you grew up with many peers. Yes, you're not alone here, but communication was forbidden for you not to establish a bond. Of course, now you have started to see more psychological aspects of your education. The first thing they tell you is how much work you do. A bandit kills for your wallet, a soldier kills for the order, a rented killer kills for money, but you kill for balance. Your philosophy is based on a ruthless math. A person should die so that thousands live. Tarakat does not see himself as a killer, but as a historian. What you do is not a crime, it is clean. It is forbidden to personalize the mission. You can't hate the target. It's just a system error. And the assailant's job is to fix that error. That's why you don't have a face, no name, no grave. Psychological training also applies to this. They make you forget your past, get into different identities. Then your pride-breaking training starts. They send you to the dirtiest streets of the city in your beggar's clothes. You lie in the garbage for days. People step on you, spit on your face. If you get angry and try to use those assailant skills, you will be considered unsuccessful. Why? Because a real assailant should learn to be no one. You should leave your ego, pride, and honor at the door, so that you can cut your throat as an assailant next to a king you need. Anyway, you jumped on the right side of your team and stood on their 20s. Of course, there is no waiting. The leader called you to his room. A parochial man put a gold and a dagger on the table. Your goal was to protect your neighbor kingdom with thousands of soldiers, and you were the king of the top of the castle. You put on your black clothes, cover your face, and for the first time from that castle, you were not a victim, but a dead angel. The game ended, the hunt began. Your journey took days. You reached the castle you were aiming for. If you think you're going to jump like in the movies, you're wrong. In those times, the bird master was caught in the rain of arrows. At this point, the training of pride and shame began. Everyone was looking at the main door, and you found the poison that spilled from the canal of the city. You dreamed of being a warrior when you infiltrated the palace. You were a servant. No one even looked at that dirty, silent cleaner. The biggest camouflage was ordinary. Anyway, the only place where the king was left alone was his room. So you did that boring thing that created 99% of the assassination. Waiting. And finally that moment came. He lay down on the king's bed. You got out of the place where you hid silently. There is no music, no swordsmanship, no shouting like, "Your end has come, cruel man." There is only that sound that comes out of the skin of the poisonous snake. The only move that makes the king try to hear and get hit is the shaft. The only shot you've been working on for years. Without even understanding what the king was, he gave his last breath with a terrifying expression in his eyes. Your mission was completed. Kamran's bow was cut off. Of course, when the king's lifeless body was found in the morning, the bells began to ring. But you were already tamed. When you returned to the castle, the confetti did not explode. No one applauded you. You went to bed like a normal day. The next morning when you woke up, there was a new parchment on the table at the top of your head. A new name, a new kingdom, a new balance problem. Because in this world, the cruel would not end. Vahera's work would never end. This was your eternal turn. You gave your last breath to countless sacrifices and stood on your 40s. Of course, it was time for you to pay for using your body so horribly. You were no longer like before. That's why you retired. But fortunately, new houses are being built and new children are being taken. Yes, you were constantly going through that vicious cycle. You were also very experienced in the medical field. You were also sent to very critical missions. You would even take care of some of your missions without dying. For example, one day you sneaked into a commander's room who was doing the ambush. And you left a dagger next to your bed. The message was clear. I could kill you while you were sleeping. But I didn't. Raise the ambush. Otherwise, that dagger will not go to the bed again, it will go to your throat. When you relied on your hands, you were already very strong. When you looked back, the only thing you saw was that you were a child who could not live. And the pain you suffered. But you were still aware of something. You paid the price for hundreds of wars, for the lives of innocent people. So how did it happen? No one learned. Maybe you got lost in the ambush mission. Maybe you took a deep breath in the ambush that was made to your fate. But you always hid the truth. Because you didn't have a name. You didn't have a past. You didn't have a grave. You were a nameless shadow painted in darkness. Yes, friends. In history, there were really such lives. If you like the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the new video. Music on.